Welcome back to the Keri Croft Show. In this episode, I sit down with Gene Smith, Senior Vice President and Athletic Director for The Ohio State University. This man really needs no introduction. You can just hit your Google machine and see that everything he's touched has basically turned to gold his entire career. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand why Gene Smith has realized so much success in his life. His overarching energy is humility and kindness. And you'd better believe he understands the power of strong relationships and paying attention to the details. It was such a highlight for me to hold space and facilitate Gene's trip down memory lane. And my hope is that you learned something that you didn't already know about this incredible man. Gene, thank you again for your time. And thank you so much to everyone out there who continues to support my little podcast. It really means a lot. Now sit back, relax, enjoy the Keri Croft Show. And go Bucks, baby. Gene Smith, welcome to the Keri Croft Show.
I'm so excited. This is going to be a good one.
Now, I'm excited to have you, big time.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I actually can't believe you said yes.
Why?
Let's be honest. I don't know, because I've got like 10 subscribers.
I'm sure you got more than that.
I have more than that. But I was just like, let me just ask Gene and see, because I know you're a busy guy. You've got a lot going on.
Well, you're a friend.
Well, thank you.
That's why.
That means a lot to me. Thank you.
That's true.
So let's talk about how we met.
Yes.
Because it probably, I don't even know if you remember this, but it made a big impression on me. We were at Hyde Park.
Yep.
And full transparency, so we know each other through my dad. He's affiliated with Ohio State. And we're at this fancy Hyde Park dinner, private room.
Love that place.
And I'm like, yeah. But see, I don't love like the big fancy meals, right? So I go for, and you and I happen to sit next to each other. We'd never met.
Right.
And I go for the burger and fries. Okay.
Killing me.
So we're sitting there. Everybody's kind of getting to know each other. And I look to my left and there's a big hand in my plate. And I was like, you had your hand in my fries.
Yeah.
And I was like, I immediately was like, I love this guy. Because that was just, it just was, it sounds simple, but it's like you're at this fancy thing and it's this big, whatever. And you're like, no, we're just two people sitting next to each other sharing fries.
That's right.
And I shared my ketchup with you.
Yeah, that's it. That's exact. Be authentic.
That's right.
Be who you are. Yeah.
So immediately I was like, you know what? This guy, he's got something, right?
Well, thank you. So anybody out there listening, if I'm ever sitting next to you and you order fries, you know what's coming.
Yeah. But it said, so your EQ has to be through the roof.
It is.
And you've had it tested probably. Whatever the score, I know that it's got to be up there, because that's not my only experience with you that I've seen you operate. But that was like the initial thing.
It's there. That's my asset. I'll never have the highest IQ in the room, but I'll go to war with my EQ.
But I think that's probably going to get you farther a lot of times than straight IQ, because a lot of people with a high IQ can't even find their way out of a paper bag.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So let's go back to when you were little. I'm very enamored with people, the way they grew up. Mm-hmm. And so what I understand, and if I mess anything up, just correct me.
Go ahead.
But Ted
and
Elizabeth?
Yep.
Okay. Your dad and your mom. So from what I understand, you had a real stable childhood. Parents were together.
Yep.
Your father, let's start with him.
Yeah.
Because what I loved about what I read, your father was an electrical contractor.
Yep.
So he would get you out of bed.
Yep. Early in the morning.
What's the youngest that you remember being with your dad in the truck?
I remember 5 years old is the earliest I remember. And it was always dark. And at that point in time in my life, I didn't have any clue what time it was. It was just dark. And I had time to get a little something to eat. Back in the day, it was milk and cereal with some sugar on it. And then I go get in this truck and we go to a site.
Were you mad at the time? Like, damn, I wish I could sleep.
No, I didn't know any better. It's like, fish don't know they're wet. So, I thought this was the natural order of life.
You know what? You're right.
They don't know they're wet. So, I wouldn't think anything else except, this is the natural. And so I was so young, and actually, as I got older over time, there were moments where it's like, it was pissing me off, but I was so used to it.
Yeah. So early on, you would see the electrician talk to the plumber, talk to the bricklayer.
Yep.
And while there weren't X's and O's in a film room, they were sure as shit a team.
Oh, yeah, they're players. Those are
working
my
together.
heroes.
Right.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, who do you look up to? Who's your heroes? And that's them. I learned so much from subcontractors.
Yeah.
And, sitting with so early in my life, I just carry stuff around. Go get the 14-2 wire or bring these pipes or whatever it was. I carried stuff. I didn't know what to do with it. So I was a lifter and working for masonry guys. I carried bricks and blocks. And so, but then eventually I learned how to do some of that stuff. But I used to go get their food and their coffee at, the 9:45 or 10:15 break when that, silver truck came up, canteen truck came up, and, donuts and pastries and all that type of stuff. They give me their money and I'd bring their stuff back to the site and I'd sit down and eat it, and then I'd listen and learn.
Yeah.
The things I heard at that young age, I probably shouldn't have heard.
Oh, I'm
because they
sure.
talked about everything.
Yeah,
son, but
they're not filtering it.
No, they didn't filter it, and but it was the lessons learned through that experience. It's just unbelievable.
And nobody works harder than those guys. Like it's before the sun comes up and after the sun comes down.
That's right. That's right. And my dad was primarily in the residential home area, and so every now and then we do some commercial buildings. But there was a sense of pride for all of them when it was done, when the project was done. And I remember when I first learned how to actually do electrical work, he left me at one of the houses, and I wired the whole house. He wouldn't let me tie it back into the fuse box. But I wired everything, and he would come in and he'd measure the outlets and make sure they were at the right height. He'd look at the outlets and make sure I had the adapters in the right place, turned the right way, and I just remember all that, and I remember the sequencing of things where, we couldn't do electrical work until the carpenters finished their work. And sometimes we couldn't do electrical work until the plumbers ran their pipes because they'd be between the studs. And so all those type of things, that coordination of activities, I learned a lot. And great work ethic, how to work alongside people who were trying to get things done the right way. There were some times when I would talk to a carpenter and say, "Hey, man, this stud's not in the right spot."
Really, you did?
Yeah, and then they go and look and they say, "Yeah, you're right," and so they move it, and then I could do my work.
What was your dad's demeanor? Because I'm curious where you get your.
Yeah.
You have a very. It's not a soft energy by any means, but you have a calming. You're like the water, not the wave.
Well, thank you.
And it's a huge compliment. But I'm curious who you got that from.
It was him. It was him largely, but I also would probably say my mom too. She was a nurse. Her bedside manner had to be. I never saw her actually working, but I can imagine that her bedside manner was phenomenal because she was a listener. She'd ask the question and then she'd listen, and you might be finished, answering the question, and there'd still be silence. And because she was going to give you an opportunity to say more. I figured that out over time, and hang yourself even more in some situations. Right.
She's like, yeah.
Yeah. And then she said, well, go to your room and wait till your father comes home. But, he was that way. He was pretty calm about things. I never really saw him angry except when, I pissed him off and mom, put me in the room. But he never really, even when he punished me, he was like calm about it.
Yeah. Your mom was a nurse for what, 33 years?
33 years, yeah. She worked for Dr. Spock for a little while.
A lot to be, there's a lot to be said for that. Both of your parents just were hardworking, solid. That's just amazing. Not everybody has that.
Yeah, no, they were hard workers, and, the weekends were fun. There was a lot of partying going on Friday night and Saturdays, and because it was the order of things. They worked hard from Sunday to Friday, and then sometimes Dad would work on a Saturday or might do a special thing on a Sunday, but largely Friday nights and Saturday nights were were unbelievable.
Did you have, how many siblings too?
I had an older sister.
Older sister?
Yeah, she still lives in Cleveland, yeah.
Okay, so you were the youngin'.
I was the puppy.
Okay, I got it. So did you think when you were that age, or when you were growing up, did you think I want to do what my dad's doing? Or did you, okay, that's what
that
you
was
were.
my whole goal. And I didn't think about going to college. I was going to go to a 2-year school. And I already had my electrical apprenticeship when I was 16 years old. And so I was just going to go to a junior college and get some business courses and come back and, eventually take my dad's business over and try and blow it up. He had 5 other guys that he worked with who were, in his company. And, they lived project to project. And in our basement of our home, he created this little office with the desk was a door. I'll never forget this. And he built it and used a door for his desk. It was so funny. But anyway, that's where he did a lot of his estimating for jobs that he was bidding on. And my mom was the secretary, so she managed all the books. And that's where I learned accounting to a great degree working with her. And but yeah, I was planning on just doing that, and then all of a sudden athletics came into my life.
Yeah, so the next question is, when did you realize, like, I'm an athlete, I'm really good at this? Yeah. When did that happen? Were you awkward, younger, and then all of a sudden you came into your own and it was like boom, or how did that all go down?
I was in high school. So I went to public school system all my life, and, all black schools all my life. And my dad set me down in 9th grade and said, you're not going to John F. Kennedy High School, which was, the natural order of life. You go to elementary school, middle school, and then JFK. And he said, no, you're not going. You're going to go to Chanel out in Bedford Heights. And, obviously I didn't know anything. I asked him why. And, he told me he felt that it was a better place for me academically, and he was concerned about the path that I was on with some of my boys. And so I ended up going to Chanel, all boys, a private school, all white. There was only 3 black kids in the school. And, but, what really pissed me off is there's no women, it's like,
well, right.
Come on,
I'm
Dad.
trying to figure out which
what's up with that?
Like, now I've got,
the hell did I do?
Well, but in all, but seriously, like, how did that, to go from an all black school to all of a sudden, that had to be.
It was hard. And, and I got on a bus. I had to walk like 4 blocks, got on the bus at St. Henry's Middle School, and got a bus out to Bedford Heights. And, it was organized sport became my outlet. I didn't have organized sports until I went to Chanel. And so to your earlier question about, when did I realize I had this athleticism, it wasn't until I went to Chanel. And it was there in that first year I played football, played basketball, ran track. And the next year I played football, played basketball, played baseball, didn't run track. And then my last year I ran track instead of baseball, and tried wrestling for like 2 seconds. And then, but it was really in my junior year in high school that I started to get recruited, and I started to think about college. Letters started to come to my home, and my mom and I would sit down and talk about, college. I never talked about college with anyone until those letters came.
Your dad knew, though. Yeah. He knew that you needed to go to this school.
Yeah. My boys that I hung out with growing up, I mean, we, at that time, there were gangs, but they really weren't gangs, as I look at them today. But it was 6 of us, and, we ran kind of wild. We did some things that, fortunately Google wasn't around or cell phones weren't around, and my dad knew that, and their dads knew that. And, so I think his idea was to extract me from that behavior as I look back on it now, and that influence of, what I was dealing with, and put me in an environment where I wouldn't do those things. And I learned a lot. I mean, that first year at Chanel was painful. It was painful. I'll never forget This was a time when the civil rights movement was just ending, and Chanel was a small private school, 500 boys. Across the street was Bedford Heights High School. It was the public school. And after football practice, I would go stand and wait for the bus to come pick me up. And I would take all types of abuse from those cars coming out of those parking lots. And for some reason, all of a sudden, it just stopped. Those cars would go by and nothing would be said. And I turned around one day and looked, and my guys that I was playing with, who normally would have just jumped in their cars and leave, were all of a sudden just sitting there. And I realized that Steve Keklovich and Petsock and all the boys, Bill Hanslick, all the boys had, Brian told, they had sent a message, and I didn't even know it. And so that abuse stopped. And so that's when I really got into the relationships that I didn't understand what they meant. And they did that for me. They saw something. And so that's when I really embraced Chanel and began to suck it up and learn and enjoy the environment the right way. When they showed that for me, it changed me. It changed me.
So did you make friends with people at Chanel that were white?
Yeah, I had no choice.
But I'm saying, so I didn't know if maybe how many black kids were in the...
There's only 3 of us.
So you kind of are forced into seeing all these sides of these people that you may have had your own preconceived notions about.
I wasn't Catholic. I was all of a sudden kneeling.
Right.
So all of a sudden...
And you were wearing a uniform, right?
No, we didn't have a uniform. No uniform. It was totally relaxed. But, it was just, it was a whole new environment. I'm walking into a place with, an afro and, dashiki and, a whole new world. And so it was, sports did it for me. I got thrown into that right away, because I could play football. And, for the first time I had pads on, I had a helmet. I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Let's go.
And so that really was my relief. And I think I earned respect from them because of my work ethic.
Yeah.
When I went to the field, it was, I went to work, and everything we did to warm up, everything, I was like trying to win everything.
You were all in.
And I think that, ingratiated me with them. And then ultimately in the locker room, I got more comfortable having conversations. And, I tell athletes all the time, and there's, when you first go into a locker room and, you take a shower for the first time with a whole bunch of people, that's a interesting experience, right? And so a lot of people don't have that in their lives, where you get undressed and you actually go into the shower together. And so, that's the beginning of letting your guard down. And I look back on my experience there, and that's where I started to, get comfortable in having a relationship with people that I didn't grow up with.
Now, Ross Browner.
My boy.
Yeah, your boy.
He's God, I miss him.
Yeah, I actually realized he passed away. Was it last year? From complications of COVID. So when did you meet him? Where did he fit in?
Yeah, my junior year in high school. He's from Warren, Ohio, in Cleveland. I was from east side of Cleveland. We're like 35, 40 minutes away from his house. And I met him at a training session in Cleveland. And there was another guy by the name of Gary Jeter who went to Cathedral Latin, who ended up going to USC. And we ended up working out together. And Ross, for some reason, he and his brother Jimmy came up to this training session that we were in. And that's where we first met. And then we got close, really, in my senior year when we started to go on recruiting trips. Back in the day, you can take as many recruiting trips as you wanted to. So I took a lot, and so did he. And so we were a lot of times on recruiting trips together. We were on the recruiting trip to Notre Dame together, which is why we went to Notre Dame and became roommates. But yeah, he became a good friend.
So Era won you guys over, right?
Yeah.
My question about your recruiting experience, were you heavily recruited by Ohio State and Michigan?
Yeah, it came down to Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Michigan.
And so you had Woody Hayes?
I had Woody Hayes, Bo,
Schembechler, and Era. So that's a trifecta, right?
It's unbelievable. I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, that was our world.
So me doing this, some deep diving into Era, man, was he a well-respected guy. And I want to know from you, because I don't, Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, they've got their own amazing legacies. So for you to be choosing between those three men, that's incredible.
It really was.
Incredible. But what set him apart?
Yeah, he was the coolest dude. But, I don't know. I sat in his office and we never talked football. Similarly with Woody and Bo, but it would seem more authentic with Era. And I just connected with him. And we had a great conversation about life. And I just walked out of that office feeling like, okay, this guy is pretty cool. And then, the campus was small. I embraced that smallness. And maybe the Chanel factor had a little bit for me as well. But Ross had the same feeling because he and I talked a lot on the old rotary dial phones. But, we both had the same feeling when we met with Era. It was just something special about that guy.
Were you guys going together though? You're like, we're gonna, like, I'm not going to Ohio State and you're going to Michigan.
I think that's why I was recruited by everybody, because they knew how close I was to Ross, because he was a real player.
You're a package deal.
Yeah, he was a real player. They said, we got to get Gene, that way we get Ross.
Okay, so 1973, you guys win the national championship. That's pretty spectacular.
It was unbelievable.
Right? So you were on a big high.
Won every game.
I mean,
it's unbelievable.
And then your sophomore year, was it when you broke your arm?
Yeah, sophomore year.
But I read, now you can tell me if this is fake news, that you guys got into some trouble in the dorm too, in your sophomore year. Couple things happening.
That was a hard year. That was another turning point in my life. So 6 of my friends got, including Ross, got expelled from school, and fortunately, I stayed in the room that I should have stayed in, that they should have stayed in, and I didn't go where they went, and they ended up getting expelled. And 5 of the 6 chose to come back to Notre Dame and compete. And but myself that year broke my arm. Didn't have my partners. Didn't have Ross. It was hard. So I never forget it. I had an old blue Polara, and we held together by, wasn't duct tape at the time, it was electrical tape, but I literally packed up and was going to go home and quit because I missed my boys. I wasn't playing, and I wasn't a great player anyway, but I wasn't on the team, and so I was going to leave. And some kind of way, Joe Yanto, the defensive line coach at that time, who's from Orville, Ohio, by the way, found out and caught me, and I ended up spending about 3 hours with him, and he convinced me to stay. And I so owe him so much, because it was another turning point in my life.
Isn't it important, just these mentors that take moments and see things in you? It's everything. It can completely change your trajectory.
Totally.
Just that 3-hour conversation. That guy cared enough to sit down and really get in there with you, and it changed. Because your mom and dad would not have, I don't think they would have been real happy with you coming home.
I would have just pulled up in the drive with all my stuff.
I'm back.
And they would have made me turn around and go back. And I remember him talking about that. He said, "Have you talked to your parents?" I said, "No." And he knew that my dad for sure would have made me turn around and drive 5 hours back.
You would have set your happy ass right back.
Let's go get gas and go.
Oh my God! So while we're still in the Notre Dame vein, we have to talk about Rudy.
Oh boy!
Right.
Yeah,
so Rudy was 1975.
1975. We were playing Georgia Tech, and Joe Yanto was the defensive line coach, and Rudy, You had to go there.
I did, because this is actually an amazing fact about you that probably some people don't know.
I technically did not come out for Rudy. He said that. He came and gave some speech here to some high school and said I came out for him. Where the truth is, there's another defensive end, Jay Case, who's actually from Cincinnati, and I think he's still in Cincinnati. Jay Case and myself were in the game. Yanto brought us both out, and Rudy went in with somebody else. And so I didn't really come out for Rudy.
Yeah.
It was, Yanto took me out.
But was Rudy kind of a pest? I mean, was he a distraction?
Yeah, no, not really. He was a good guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to bust people's bubble about the movie, so I won't go too deep. But, he had his moments where he was a pest, like on Thursdays before a game, you tether down. You're only going like 50% speed, and Rudy be trying to go 100% speed, and he would piss people off, and so people took him for what he was. Yeah. And actually, the gentleman in the movie didn't truly depict Rudy well physically. Rudy was stocked and built like a brick shithouse, and he had shoulders and arms, and he was the real deal. But he was Rudy. He was Rudy. Okay. And the movie largely is true. They had to embellish some things in order to to make it a good movie, but it's largely true.
Okay. Moving right along, Gene.
Yes.
So you end up graduating, and then you took a position as assistant coach on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And did you love coaching? I feel like you were only doing that for a couple of years.
Yeah, I didn't aspire to coach.
Yeah.
I was looking for jobs, and Dan Devine came in, and I was watching some film from the year before, and he asked me to be a graduate assistant, and so I first said, "What the hell is that?" And so became a graduate assistant. Then Francis Pay left and went to Cal Berkeley, and Devine promoted me to full-time coach. And so I have 12 credit hours towards my master's, but I didn't love it. Then they hired Jerry Faust, and Faust didn't hire me back. So I was going to go get my MBA, and met this gentleman by the name of Dave Brooks, who was the regional manager for IBM, and he convinced me that going to IBM training was the equivalent to getting your MBA. And so I went to work for IBM.
And I worked for AT&T.
Yeah.
In the big corporate environment, that had to be a huge departure from what you were used to.
Huge.
Positive column, you're probably making a lot of coin.
Oh yeah.
So that's,
no question.
That's how they get you.
Yep.
But then on the other side, it can be a very empty,
right?
Especially if you were someone who was doing something that was so driven by a passion or purpose. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine you were kind of in there trying to feel your way around, like, wow, is this what I'm doing? I'm doing sales and marketing.
Right.
It
was weird.
And the paychecks would come in, and that would keep you going. Mm-hmm. At least that was how I felt at AT&T. I'm like, they called it the golden handcuffs. Mm-hmm. Yep. They would just keep you there because of the perks and the money and the flexibility, But then somebody came back around with the opportunity for, was it Eastern Michigan?
Yep.
Eastern Michigan.
Yep.
See, I told you I know more about you than you,
Gene. This is scary.
Come on.
This is scary.
So Eastern Michigan, you get the opportunity to be an AD. Mm-hmm. And that was
unbelievable.
Obviously, you loved it.
Yeah, I didn't, like you were saying earlier, I didn't love IBM. The money was good, but I was chasing the money. I was chasing the quota. But so when Paul Schultz, who was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame when I played, called me and said that he had this associate athletic director's position, and he was interested in someone with football background and business background, and someone that he knew. And so I went up and spent time with him, and he kind of, talked me through what the industry was, and I didn't really understand it totally, but I knew he wanted somebody to help him with managing the budget, managing some operations, and he had just hired a football coach, and he wanted somebody to help build this Eastern Michigan football. And so I took the pay cut. I was married at the time. I got married in college, and I was married at the time, so I moved my family up, and he taught me the business for 2 years. When I was associate AD, he retired. They made me interim for a while, and then they made me permanent.
You have a 7-year stint there?
Yeah, I had a 10-year stint there, 2 as associate AD, half a year as an interim, and then the rest is AD.
Okay. And then we go to Ohio, or Iowa?
Iowa State.
Iowa State.
Yeah.
How was that? Just from the...
Oh boy.
Wait, first of all, were you still married when you moved to Iowa State?
No.
Okay, so your marriage ended in that, and
In
then you
Eastern
moved
Michigan.
to Iowa State. How was just living in Iowa?
Oh, I was a single black man in Ames, Iowa.
Enough said.
Enough said. Get a map. And I was dating a girl from Vegas.
Sheila.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Take that to Ames, Iowa.
Well, I know that the hard sell was to try to get her to move from
that's
Vegas.
the greatest recruiting job in my history.
I can only. She must love her some Jean.
Oh,
well, I know she does.
I was fortunate.
Oh my goodness.
I went to work.
So, how was the experience there as being the? Was it?
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. The people were just genuinely kind people. Great work ethic. It's just the farmland.
Yeah.
And passionate. And so when we were able to accomplish some things, I mean, that passion ran deep. They showed up. They were strong. And regardless of the weather, they were there. And excuse me. So it was a blessing. I learned so much. I never drove a combine until I went there and drove combines. And I learned a lot about that environment and the quality of life. I turned down Arizona State twice.
Did you? Because that was your next move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I turned it down twice because Sheila had a great job, first of all. And I didn't want to uproot her from the great job that she had. But at the same time, I just enjoyed the people. And that's important to me. Mm-hmm. That's a part of the quality of life is the people that you're around. And so it was hard to leave. That's how good it was. And we were on a trajectory. Dan McCartney is my football coach, and we were slowly turning things around. And basketball was doing well, but football was on the right path.
Mm-hmm. And then you left.
Yep.
And then you went to Arizona State.
Arizona State for 5.
Good experience there.
Yeah, I learned a lot about a whole lot of things. That was probably the toughest job I had. In the Valley, they have everything. The entertainment dollar is stretched. And so 75% of the people at that particular time were not from the Valley. So they didn't have an affinity to Arizona State University. And they were from Kansas, they were from New York, and they were just there. And so it had to be really creative marketing-wise. We had to be good, but we really had to be creative.
Now, when you got the opportunity at Ohio State, was that like a holy shit moment for you? Like, I have arrived. This is Ohio State, the Ohio State University.
Yeah, I turned it down twice.
You did?
Yeah. So I'll never forget this either. So, I just hadn't accomplished at Arizona State University what I'd set out to accomplish. And I had a great president. Michael Crow was outstanding. And and he was fun to be around. But, I'm on a golf course. I'm living on a golf course. I got a pool in the backyard, a jacuzzi. I mean, come on.
You got Sheila.
Yeah, I got Sheila. And she had a great job again. And so she was working directly for the president. And I'll never forget, it was Jewel Parker Rhodes and Sheila. We were having dinner and having wine. And, Jewel Parker Rhodes, kind of challenged me a little bit and said, you need to do what's right. Ohio State's never had a black athletic director. You have a social responsibility. And then Sheila was right there. And you need to at least go and listen. And I went to Dallas to interview. And I remember getting up on that Sunday and asking Sheila if I had to wear a tie. And she made me wear a tie. And it's the most comfortable, relaxed interview I ever had. But I met, the chair was Joe Aludo, who was, I just connected with him in so many different ways. I was the dean of the College of Business at that time, and there was, Brandon Mitchell was a student athlete on that committee, and there were others, and I just connected, and I was just so relaxed. I just told them everything I felt relative to their questions, and walked out of there and figured if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't.
And that's an amazing attitude to have.
Yeah, when you get to that point. I think it helps people if you get such a relaxing moment. I mean, all the other interviews I had, I was like, pins and needles and trying to cross every T and dot every I. And in that one, I really didn't care. And but once I was in that room, and to your point earlier, once I was in that room and was having a conversation, I was like, oh my God, this is Ohio State. This is what it means. And then when I was leaving, that's when I really wanted it. So I turned down the interview twice, not the job, but because they hadn't formally offered it to me. But I turned the interview down twice, and once I left that interview, I said, "Yeah, this is the real deal." And so then we started from there.
You know what they call imposter syndrome these days?
What's that?
Have you? Okay, so all the young kids, if you go on the gram or TikTok or whatever, everybody's talking about imposter syndrome.
Okay.
So they put a name on this thing where everyone who's involved, like let's say you just got a job at Ohio State and you're like, holy shit, I'm the athletic director for Ohio State. But you're like, but I'm just Gene. I'm just that little boy in my dad's truck. What the hell? What if they see through me? Did you ever feel that? Like you had to have felt at some points, you're like, I mean, what if I, the whole, what if I fail, but what if I fly? Right. Do you remember any particular moments through your career where you had to like pep talk yourself right back into like, no, I'm Gene Smith. I got this.
It's funny. That's interesting. I never, I got to tell you, Keri, just in all transparency, at that time, there weren't many black men or black athletic directors. It was me and Charles Harris at Arizona State when I first started. And so there weren't many of us. And I had this attitude that wherever I went, I couldn't fail. And so it never entered my mind like, oh my God, I couldn't fail.
You were up for the job.
Yeah, I mean, it's because if I failed, that would continue to give people an excuse to not hire people like me. And so I didn't take it as, pressure. That was the work ethic that the plumbers and electricians and carpentry guys instilled in me.
Yeah.
Is, we're going to build this house. We're going to get this done. And I worked in Elkhart, Indiana. There was a little area called Napanee. In the summertime, I actually built mobile homes with the Amish. And I was an electrician, and they were building the mobile homes, or I was helping wire the homes, and they had quotas, and sometimes they would say, hey, look, it'd be Monday morning, say, hey, look, we got an X number of mobile homes we got to get built by the end of the weekend. We got to be done on 2 o'clock on Thursday because we got these other jobs we're going to do. And so it wasn't like, oh my God, are we going to get that done? It was like, let's go to work. And so that's been my attitude, is let's just get it done. And so I never had one of those moments about failure.
Well, you've certainly done a bang-up job, in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
So I've got some questions from the community.
Oh, great, great. I love it.
And I told you I took all the NIL questions out.
Oh, that's fine. You can ask about NIL.
If we get time, there's so much more to unpack here. You can Google if you want to hear about the NIL, okay? I know, I get it, guys. Okay, so here's one that I find interesting. Okay, so the first Super Bowl with 2 black starting quarterbacks.
Yes.
Right? Was that, I mean, for me personally, I'm like, hell yes.
Yes,
right?
meaningful.
So were you just like, this is badass.
Yeah,
this is an amazing moment in history.
Yeah,
talk about
like
that a little
finally. Bit. Yeah, it's like finally. And it was cool to watch, and not just for me, but for all the young kids out there who look like those quarterbacks who say, "Okay, I can do that."
Yeah,
and so, I was cool. I loved every minute of it, and actually watched it through that lens. No, those two have accomplished something that will live forever.
Right. And I think, just in the environment that we're in with so many things happening in the world that aren't great, on so many levels,
Yep,
right?
right.
You have to look at that and you have to say, we have made progress in some ways.
No
like
question.
that to me was really amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And says something about those coaches, those organizations, and they're putting the keys to their Ferrari in the hands of a black man.
Yes.
And so that was really, really cool to watch.
Yeah. I have to give my brother Casey credit for that question. Casey, he gets credit.
We got it done.
Shout out to Casey. We got it done. He's like, you can't whiff on that. You've got to ask that. I'm like, okay, let me put that up on number one. Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
So what'd you think about Rihanna's performance? That's my question.
It was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and actually someone told me, I didn't notice this at the time, but someone told me that the viewership for the halftime show was larger than the game itself.
Of course it was.
Because people just tuned in. But no, she's at the top of the pyramid.
Oh,
unbelievable.
Pay me much. When she came out like that, just like staring, and she's pregnant, I was like, this is...
Well, see, at the time, I didn't know she was pregnant.
No one did. That was her coming out party.
I was still like, Sheila, what's up?
That's what everybody... There's all this stuff on TikTok, and they're like, me watching Rihanna, like nobody wanted to... Like, they felt like they were shaming her because they thought she had a postpartum body.
That's right.
When really the woman's like, what's up? I'm hanging from a ceiling, and I'm also pregnant, and bitch better have my money.
Unbelievable.
It was... Oh, and I love their outfits. I loved everything. Do you feel like Patrick Mahomes' wife and brother should be put in a padded room by themselves and stay out of everything so that, do you think that, or do you find them to be annoying?
They don't annoy me.
Of course they don't.
They don't annoy me.
You know what? They annoy me. His brother annoys me. I'm like, let him have his moment.
Yeah,
and he
that
has
is
to
so
come
funny.
back and like dance. Like, wait, me.
That's right. See me.
Which is kind of, I mean, I get it. Like, he's like, well, okay, but he's Patrick Mahomes. Like, give him his moment, dude.
That was funny.
Could you imagine like the real conversations that go on behind closed doors where he's like,
no,
you two, you did it again.
Right.
You're ruining my rap. Well, I personally think they should be, banned temporarily. Okay, here's a good one. Scale of 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
How excited are you internally, the inside voice of you, at the prospect of Bronny potentially coming to Ohio State to play basketball? And the other part of that question is, in all seriousness, can you share your thoughts on the impact you think that would have on the university?
I'm excited that we're in the mix. I've always told our coaches, our job is to try and close and get things done, but we got to be in the mix. And so I'm excited that we're in the mix. And on that scale, it's a 10 for me. I just love LeBron. I've had some opportunities to have some interactions with him, as you well know. And so I think what he's done with his sons, and particularly Bronny, is phenomenal. He and his wife have raised a good young man. So from a character point of view, would love to have him in our program. Obviously, from a talent point of view, for sure. But I'd be excited to see him in our program. And the benefits beyond the floor would be great. It'd be great for the state of Ohio. Be great for Akron. I think it would really be good. Yeah.
Now we have to talk about LeBron, the LeBron selfie really quick, because there's part of this that you don't know about that haunts me.
What?
So
I thought I was helping.
So here's so just for the backdrop. So another thing that you did that just showed me how how cool you are, because you did not have to do this, any part of you. I had mentioned that it's like on my bucket list to get a selfie with LeBron. Mm-hmm. We had the opportunity to be on the floor. It was the Michigan-Ohio State game. It was a big deal.
Big deal.
What was it? Was it 2017 or 18? Anyway.
I can't remember.
So you said, you know what? I'm going to get you a selfie. And I mean, I was just, I can't believe this, like core memory. Well, then something happened in the beginning of the game that was not good. And I don't remember. Yeah, but Ohio State was messing up big time. And I was like, damn, I'm like, Gene's probably like, he's got bigger fish to fry than me. Well, the next thing you know, after halftime, you looked at me and you like just like backdoored it, because I didn't want like my whole family getting in the selfie. I wanted a selfie with LeBron, and you helped me navigate that. So here's the thing. I've always had this vision. I think LeBron needs to know about system strength.
Oh.
He's from Cleveland. Mm-hmm. Cleveland has been like, you have to bring system strength to Cleveland, right? So in my mind, there's certain people that I feel like, okay, he resonates with this brand, right?
He does.
The treadmill and cycling workouts, they're fatiguing, they're saturated. Mm-hmm. System of strength it's it.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yep.
We have a very Nike vibe, unisex. We're all about the community, diversity, inclusion, trying to make everybody more of a badass. So I've had these conversations with LeBron millions of times in my head, in the shower, before I go to bed, whatever. So part of my excitement was like, what if I can talk to him for 5 minutes about SOS, right? Meantime, I have the hat on. Sheila actually ends up bringing me in. Mm-hmm. LeBron is here.
Yep.
I'm here. He looks at me and do you know what he says?
What?
I really like your logo.
Really? I didn't know that.
So I didn't tell you this part. So I got so frozen, and then Birdman was in there Birdman was throwing attitude, okay? Because Birdman didn't want us in there.
Right.
So I instead of being like, LeBron, this is my company. Right. I really feel like we should talk about this. And I'm a salesperson. I went totally limp. And then LeBron goes, here, my arms are longer than yours. And we did that selfie where I was like this. In my head, I'm like, you missed it, Keri.
That's true, you missed it.
I did miss it. And so now for the rest of my life, I look at that selfie and I'm like, Keri, LeBron, you had him in you had him in your throws, but maybe
and he laid it out for you. Like, I love your logo.
The universe did. There was like, Keri, he loves your logo. He loves your logo. And I'm like,
oh, that's funny.
Oh, well, whatever.
You never know.
You never do. Okay, here's another one. What was the hardest personal issue you dealt with as you were coming up in your career? And what do you remember the most about it? How did you navigate through it?
Oh, wow. Personal. That's a hard one. I probably would say when I took the Iowa State job, I was leaving my children with my ex-wife, going from, the state of Michigan to Iowa, and knowing that I would have to come up with a travel strategy to have them involved and me be involved in their lives. And it wasn't the best. And so that was hard. It was hard. And I knew that I needed to stay on this career trajectory so I could do the things that I'm doing today for my children and my grandchildren. But that was really, really hard because I didn't see different things in their lives that I should have seen, and saw some games here and there, but not every day.
Yeah, and it was unavoidable because you couldn't really stay because you had to go. You had to go forward.
Yeah, and then taught them the same thing. That's why they're all over the country right now.
And I'm sure at this point, as grown people, they get it. Yeah,
they do now. They have children, and so, but it's from that point in time. That first year that in Iowa was, and I was alone. Mm-hmm. That was really, 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 really hard. Yeah. So from a personal point of view, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my career.
That's a parallel with my dad.
Yeah,
because
probably.
My dad and mom got divorced,
mm-hmm.
and he was working his tail off in Lima,
mm-hmm.
and the worst thing that could have happened to my dad was to stay in Lima.
Right.
And he had his eye on the prize, and he was able to just have this stair-step trajectory, and I would never
mm-hmm.
have wanted him to not do that.
Right.
But when you're a kid and when you're a father who is not, you can't control the everyday.
Right.
That's a whole nother struggle that,
that's a whole nother struggle.
I don't think people give enough,
that's right.
bearing to, It's always, that's hard. Okay. So here's another one. Okay. What's the toughest issue you've handled at Ohio State to date? Like, which situation really got to you the most? Like, you take it home with you the most?
These are the worst everywhere, but 2 weeks in, we lost a student athlete. Jessica Beck was on our synchronized swimming team. And so 2 weeks on the job. And I remember going to her apartment with her roommates at that time. And then, setting up all the things you have to set up for the team from a counseling point of view. And it was painful, when anytime you lose a life, it's painful. And so that was hard. I've lost others, but that first one here was really one that I think about a lot every year. We have the Jessica Beck Invitational in synchronized swimming. I was actually there this year with her mom. Her mom sat next to me, and so that's just one that just it just lives with you. And there's been others, but that one was my first. And I've had other personnel management issues that really hard. The Jim Tressel was hard, so those the hardest ones are when you lose life.
Okay, so let's get to Sheila real quick before we wrap up, because this woman is a dominating force. She's an absolute badass. And when I talked to her yesterday, I was just reminded again, like, man,
she's
what a
badass.
life force, right? And does she ever love you?
Oh, and I love her.
Now, you guys are a really great team.
Yeah.
And I think that she probably, she helps you with your schedule and kind of rounding off your edges and really.
No, we're our team, and our partnership is strong, and that comes from our love. But because she was in athletics, has helped me. Because she was an associate athletic director at UNLV for a long time. She was in the business. She was an athlete herself. She loves going to sporting events. I can't imagine, having someone that couldn't go to, women's tennis, synchronized swimming, wrestling, all those type of sports. She wants to go to those, and she's excited about it. So, no, it's a great partnership. I just love it.
Yeah. Okay, so just when everyone thought I was going to let this interview go without any discussion of NILs, we will have one conversation about this very quickly, because I understand.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. I don't sit and go to Bucknuts and Buck Scoop and all these fanatic things. At a high level, I'd heard you say in an interview that for the most part, the NIL is really helping these student athletes. Right. You used an example, I think it was a lacrosse player. And then another example is someone who's helping, like has a single mom at home and is helping fund. Those are really great stories. And then you have the other side of it with that's a nightmare. And you said, well, the media only talks about the plane that crashes.
That's right.
The media doesn't talk about all the hundreds of thousands of planes that are landing safely, right? So what is your, just in a nutshell, what is your perspective on NIL?
Yeah, it's a great thing. It really is for our student athletes. And we do have a whole bunch of student athletes who are really taking advantage of it the right way. But yeah, the dark spot is the recruiting inducements and the tampering that's going on, and trying to mitigate that. And we've learned a lot over this last year. Actually, we're going to probably be announcing something in April, hopefully, around a new strategy that we're going to employ after everything that we've learned, and try and make sure we have something that lasts forever, not just some of these one-off Band-Aid type things, I call them. We got to have a program, and so hopefully we can get that done, and it'll help mitigate some of the issues. But it's largely working. It really is. The student athletes deserve that opportunity. They've always deserved that opportunity. We have over 400 student athletes who are involved. Interesting enough, majority of our women student athletes are the ones that truly are taking advantage of it, because many of them are on partial scholarships. And so this way they can mitigate the debt that they would normally leave with. So it's working well. But we still have to figure out this recruiting space. And I'm thankful for all the donors who stepped up and gave money to the old foundation, and Cohesion, and we need more people doing that. But at the end of the day, we need a longer-term solution, and so that's what we're working on now. Yeah. Last
question for you. Do you still get goosies every time, like at a home game, you get goosebumps every time the marching band comes out, and every time, like Carmen, Ohio?
My moment is the moment the flag is raised. Just watching ROTC, and every now and then I think that the one guy that has to bring the rope down and tie it up, I think he's going to hit the pole because he's flying so fast. But that moment in time where it's quiet, and you got this ceremony that we're all paying tribute to. It's really cool for me. But yeah, all the other stuff, the band coming out or the team coming out or the team doing their quick cows with the band and the students at the South End Zone, all those moments are traditions that, will stay with you forever. Hang on Sloopy at the end of the third quarter. I mean, all those type of things are goosebumps type moments.
I always tear up of Carmen, Ohio every time.
Do you? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's awesome.
I've got Carmen, Ohio on here to round out our interview. But before I do that, I do sincerely want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
You didn't have to come do this, and you did.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just, it was just so much fun for me.
Yeah.
And thank you. I just truly appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And for those of you out there who want to follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple, I would absolutely love it. All right, Gene, let's
do it.
Let's do this. Every time.
Oh yeah, this is beautiful.
I can do it. Let's see if I can do it without tearing up.
Without tearing up.
Well, I think about my dad.
Oh, sure.
Because he will all just kind of sway back and forth.
Yeah.
And there's nothing he loves more than.
Oh yeah. Well,
so it's a
every team, win or lose, does this at the end of their contest, and it is one of those moments where everybody just gets quiet and sings, and it's a tearjerker. For years will roll.
You got a voice.
Time and change will surely show how firm thy friendships, Ohio.
And
it's
there
awesome.
you go.
There you go.
Thank you, Gene Smith.
Oh, thank you, Keri.
That was awesome.